nature, things of that 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 nature.
Do we think Razorback fans feel a little bit better hearing Sam Pittman's voice at the beginning of one of these things this week as opposed to last week? You probably should. Arkansas goes down to Jordan-Hare Stadium, gets a 24-14 win over Auburn. Wasn't pretty. Who cares? They got to win. SEC on the road. They're 1-0 in league play, 3-1 overall. Not too shabby. I'm Curtis Wilkerson. He's Andrew Ellis. We're with Inside Arkansas, and we're back for our post-game accountability session. If you're wondering what that is, every week before the game, we do a pregame show where we talk about key position battles, and we throw out some challenges to some Razorbacks that we think are key to the operation in the upcoming game. And we make some bold predictions, and then we run it back afterwards and kind of hold ourselves accountable. Were we stupid in what we said, or did we nail it? And it's a little bit of a mixed bag here, but I'm excited for it. Andrew, Razorbacks got a win today. How you feeling, buddy?
I feel tremendous, man. I think Razorback fans should be kicked up, relaxed, watching this. Look, guys, we know it wasn't beautiful. It wasn't a beautifully played football game. You know, good things happening on both sides. But for the most part, Arkansas avoided doing anything really stupid to lose this game on the road, and that turned out to be what they needed in this one. But in all seriousness, no, it is a lot easier to talk about this because Arkansas gets to exhale a little bit. And so there's less pressure on. If we had come on here and been like, oh, it wasn't too bad after a loss, people would have been like, you idiots. And it would have been a lot more tense of a situation. And yeah, that Sam Pittman intro, I'm sure it's a little bit triggering after a loss to hear that. But after a win, you're like, that's the head coach. He's funny. Yeah, no doubt about it. We said this on the postgame show too. Obviously, Arkansas could have played better football, but they still got the win. Like, the alternative is we could be in Auburn's shoes right now trying to talk about this from their standpoint. And I just don't want that evil placed on me. So I'll take this one, no doubt about it. Let's get into it, man. We talked about some key position battles coming into this game and how we thought they might play out, how important they were to the situation there for the Razorbacks. We started with, and I believe you started with this one, Arkansas's offensive line against Auburn's defensive line. I've been a little bit torn thinking about this since the end of the game in terms of how I felt that it went, because in ways I felt pretty good about it for Arkansas, but in others I look at it and I think, well, it was, I guess, kind of their least effective game rushing, and Tame Green was kind of running for his life. I don't know, actually. It was kind of a mixed bag there. Yeah, and that's what's going to make talking about this game a little bit weird. It may at times throughout this sound like we're being negative, but we're really not. We're just kind of trying to break it down position by position, because that was kind of one of the things where if you had told me that Arkansas's offensive line wasn't going to definitively win this matchup, I would have said Arkansas had a hard time winning this game. And I said that on the postgame, that I just didn't think Arkansas was capable of winning a game like this. When I say like this, I mean heavily on their defense and turnovers and things like that. But I did think the offensive line wasn't a bad performance by any means, but I think you can definitely argue is their worst rushing performance of the year. I mean, Arkansas finished with 183 rushing yards, and a lot of that, 80 of those came from Tame Green. He really made things happen, and I feel like Jaquin Jackson fought for every yard he got. He finished with 22 carries for 75 yards. His quote-unquote worst game of the year. Still had 2 touchdowns. Still was a playmaker there, and you see how dangerous that guy's going to be and how much of a load he's going to be for SEC defenses to handle. And I thought that, we'll talk about Braylon Russell, the real big load, in a minute. But since we're talking about the O-line, because that was what the question was, pass protection continues to be a little bit of an issue for this team. Yeah, I think when teams really commit to trying to put pressure on Arkansas, they typically do. I actually thought there were many times throughout this game where Auburn would only bring 3 or 4 in a key passing down, and I just think that's a weird thing to do. I think anytime you put pressure on this Arkansas offensive line, they're a little bit shaky. But I thought that today Tame Green was able to kind of bail them out of a few things. But overall, I would not say it was a victory for the Arkansas offensive line against that front.
Yeah, I think I've got to agree with you, man. Auburn was able to get 7 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, but 3 sacks on the game against Tame Green. And yeah, it felt like he was under way more duress than he has been in some other games, even though, his escapability has certainly been a factor in Arkansas's offensive success in other games. But man, he was taking some hard hits back there. And honestly, if he wasn't so mobile and elusive, he probably would have, I don't know, like maybe gotten actually injured because there were some guys with some beelines on them there. But yeah, what stands out to me, like if you look at it, 183 yards rushing on the game, you think, okay, like it's not the 200 and whatever that they've been averaging this year, but not too shabby. But it was on 55 carries. So Arkansas averaged 3.3 yards per rush. You obviously want more than that. But I mean, it was enough for them to, I think, and we talked about this a little bit. I can't remember if it was on our pregame show, if it was on Inside Arkansas Live, about just establishing the run. Like you don't have to gouge them for 8 yards per carry like you had in some other games, but just establishing it, being able to move the chains, get positive yardage on first down, although they are just allergic to running football on first down for whatever reason. But yeah, some things to work on still for the offensive line. I wouldn't call it a definitive victory. Certainly wouldn't call it a definitive loss in this particular instance. Still some snapping issues. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Thought Josh Braun had a little bit of a rough day at the office, which is a little uncharacteristic for him. But overall, you still got the win, so you can't feel too bad about it, I don't guess. Another one, and this is a tough one, man. We had Arkansas's wide receivers versus the Auburn defensive backs. And it's, in a way, I want to say, no, Arkansas absolutely did not win that matchup. But I don't know if it was the receivers so much losing those battles against Auburn's DBs as it was Taylen Green just being off and not being able to find them. I'm sure there are some drops mixed in there. We won't have the PFF grades until tomorrow, but you go through and look at it. Green was 12 of 27 passing, but from a receiver standpoint, you had Andrew Armstrong leading the way with 5 receptions, but only had 47 yards. And so that's a little bit lower than we've seen from him. He was targeted 10 times. And so was able to pull down the reception, and half of those obviously got popped. I was worried about him early in the game when he went down after that hard hit, but he got back in there. And then a few big plays by Isaiah Satania. He had 3 receptions for 85 yards. Outside of that, you had nothing from receivers. Braylon Russell, Rodney Hill, Luke Haas, and Ty Washington each had 1 reception there. So Armstrong and Satania were the only receivers to have receptions in this game.
Yeah, Curtis, I thought about this a little bit. I don't know how we can rule this a win for the Arkansas wide receivers. Now, again, we'll touch on the positives here because you mentioned Armstrong there. He had 5 of his 10 receptions, or 5 receptions on 10 targets there. I'll be honest with you, his stat line, I didn't expect it to look like that. Like just watching the game and then looking back at it, I felt like he was more effective than the 47-yard shows. But it tells you like those 5 receptions came at like massive times. And I think he also didn't make the grab on the play where he almost died early in the first quarter there. And we were kind of a little bit worried where, hey, what's Arkansas going to do? And so I think I have that in my brain, thinking of that as a big play that I guess was not a reception. And Satania had the big play that honestly, the play of the game. I mean, there was 5 turnovers, so you can kind of count on any of those as the play of the game. But for this Arkansas offense, and really for this game and the final score, I feel like the biggest swing was Satania's big time reception on 3rd and 19, which is, I'm not overlooking that at all. But when I think about this Arkansas offense, so, Curtis, you mentioned that Taylen Green was off a little bit, and it was certainly, he completed 44% of his passes, throws 2 really bad interceptions, and he had certainly, some issues with the accuracy, which we've come to know, kind of expect. But I was thinking about it, Curtis, outside of the 2 picks and 1 throw to Armstrong that he just kind of missed, let's say he missed 6 throws. Mm-hmm. Even if he missed those 6 throws and you count those as completions, Arkansas still would only have 18 completions for about 200 yards on what we expected was one of the worst secondaries in the SEC, and statistically has been one of the worst secondaries in the SEC.
It's alarming.
And Arkansas got sacked 3 times, but as I was saying earlier, there were a lot of times where Auburn didn't bring pressure, and Taylen Green had kind of all day to throw, and that's when he was able to make that huge play to Isaiah Satania, when he was able to find Armstrong for some of those. And so I think it's not like they had a bunch of missed opportunities, but just given the matchup that we expected, we thought this was going to be one of the ways Arkansas could exploit that Auburn defense was in the back end, because that's kind of where all the question marks lie for the Tiger defense. And so I feel like, and I think Tyrone Broden, it's hard not to talk about this receiver group without mentioning that Arkansas just cannot get him going. No. And I don't know who's to blame for it. You can blame him. You can blame Taylen. You can blame their chemistry together. You can blame Bobby Petrino. I don't know, but Tyrone Broden is a guy that all offseason we kind of bought the hype. We bought the narrative that he was going to be a big part of this offense. And to say that he's not would be an understatement. And really, at this point, I'm like, man, maybe they need to stop trying to make this happen. It doesn't seem like it's working, but I do think the silver lining is Arkansas has found out who their top options are in the passing game. And it's the 2 guys that we kind of hoped it would be. Armstrong and Satania. We'd love to see Luke has. I mean, he got the one reception there, and I know Ty Washington caught a nice little 2-yard pass. I'd love to see those guys get involved, but I'm losing hope in that regard. And frankly, I think Arkansas needs to just force feed Armstrong and Satania. I think that's kind of what we've determined here today.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a time where you're starting to kind of figure out probably who you are and what your identity is, which is, I think, a running team behind Quentin Jackson and Taylon Green, what they're able to do. Yeah, you still absolutely mix in the passes, but I don't think there's any point in being something that you're not. So you look at it, and Arkansas ran the ball 55 times. They passed the ball 28. That's about a 2-to-1 ratio. I don't know if it has to be that extreme moving forward, but I think you definitely lean more on the running game because it's what you do well, and then pick your spots in the passing game. You mentioned Tyrone Broden. And by the way, like I was realizing in real time that Armstrong and Satania were the only two receivers who caught passes there. So yeah, I am going to have to give Arkansas an L for this one. And Auburn's, one of their best DBs on an already thin and young group went down early in that game. And so they were even more shorthanded, and Arkansas wasn't able to really take advantage of it. But you mentioned Broden. They tried. I mean, they targeted him a handful of times there, nothing doing. But who else? The only other one I remember was CJ Brown. But that's it. Did Tesla play?
Tesla got targeted one time on a pretty much a throwaway. I remember he did play, and I saw him get targeted, but it was on one of those where Taylor was drifting to his left, and it was like 3rd and 11, and he just kind of threw it out of bounds. And Tesla was like the closest guy. But yeah, I saw someone in our postgame chat asked about like, kind of where was Tesla? Like I thought he'd be a big part there in 3rd downs. Well, and especially because they bring in Tesla and go 4 wide and take Luke has out. So if you're going to do that, you'd think you'd have something kind of dialed up to maybe get Tesla a contested catch there. But Curtis, it's weird. I feel like it's not that I came away from this game being like, man, Arkansas's offense is screwed. I don't feel that way. And I think that also, we talk about identity and kind of what Arkansas needs to do and, play into your strengths. And I think today was at least the day that they realized that. Even though today was ugly and it was 55 carries for 3.3 an attempt. They finished like a 183 or whatever it was. And they'll have more efficient games on the ground. But I just kind of look at this offense and I'm like, maybe this is the type of game they needed to definitively know, hey, this isn't going to be some beautiful pro style throwing receivers open and doing all this crazy stuff. It's going to be hard-nosed, run the football with your quarterback. And then you have 2 receivers who have shown they can make some plays. That's kind of where Arkansas is at offensively. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I'm trying to think of who else even played. Like we saw Jordan Anthony in there a handful of times, but outside of that, like Monte Harrison got in on the last possession. I saw him down there. Okay, I was going to say I didn't remember if I saw him or not. And honestly, it's maybe it's sad, but I can't even remember who else is a receiver on this travel roster right now because I'm like, Jaden Wilson, no, he's not on the team anymore. Stafford Brown, he was hurt. Yeah, did Cross Johnson get in there? I don't know. So I don't think he got in there, but I saw him on the sideline. He was there. Yeah. Davion Dozier, didn't see him. Desmond James was there, right? We did see Desmond James. Did see him on the bench chilling. From suspension. Yeah, so I don't know, man, but yeah, it's a group that I think that they had higher hopes for in terms of their depth. It's just not a thing, but they do have 2 pretty good options in Armstrong and Satania. So Arkansas's defensive line versus Auburn's offensive line. Arkansas lost the battle. I think. I mean, I don't know. Like, let's look at this from an Auburn rushing standpoint. They had 146 more rushing than I thought. They did. Yeah. Hunter, I mean, 12 carries for 67 yards. I guess I'm surprised that he didn't get the ball more, but Auburn was also playing from behind. So maybe they were throwing it more than they normally would have, even though their 2 quarterbacks were awful. But yeah, 12 for 67. But at the end of the day, you look at it and they had 26 for 146 yards. They averaged 5.6 a carry. So I think the same thing as Arkansas in the sense of they were able to establish the run a little bit. They were getting enough out of it to turn to it, maybe more often than not. But it was crazy because they didn't touch the football for what felt like forever. What was it, like 12 minutes to 3 minutes time of possession in the first quarter? So that factors into that. But in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback, I mean, they got a couple sacks there late. 4 TFLs. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And especially because, again, we talked about Auburn's offensive line coming into this, and we didn't think they were a bad group, like a one you can really take advantage of. But in the SEC, you're really not going to face that many offensive lines. They might not face one other than maybe Mississippi State that's going to be worse than that. LSU is a little bit shaky, but it's more in the run game. In terms of like an opportunity to like pounce on an offensive line, this is probably one of the easier ones you're going to face. And so the fact that there wasn't really any pressure until late, and I believe both of their sacks came in the last 4 minutes, if I remember correctly, which, by the way, you know, when you're up 10 and you're trying to put the game away, that's when your pass rush, you want them to show up. So I will give them that credit and it was good to see Nico Davier, who I'm sure we're going to touch on later. And it was nice to see some of that a little bit. I know Slaughter, who got in for the other sack there on a blitz, which is cool. And I thought Arkansas tried some things to get some pressure on Auburn. And there were times where they at least forced Auburn's quarterbacks out of the pocket to make plays. And so that's all fine and dandy. But I agree when I keep coming back to this D-line. And we've been pretty hard on the D-line overall. That's been one of the biggest question marks on the team. It wasn't like an egregious performance, whereas like, oh, man, they were just getting gashed and, you know, nothing was doing. Like, it wasn't horrible. It just wasn't like the type of performance where we're like, oh, hey, there's the Arkansas D-line. We're still kind of waiting for more playmakers to step up and emerge. We saw a lot of defensive linemen making plays downfield. Curtis, what do you think of Nico Davier being basically the flat corner, like in the Tampa 2? He was like playing the corner there when Arkansas was trying to put the game away and then playing that prevent defense. Well, that was kind of crazy. It seemingly worked.
I didn't think I would be more surprised after seeing Landon Jackson doing that a couple weeks ago. But then they had Nico doing it, and I was like, I guess it's just going to be a thing now.
Nico's an athlete, though, man. Nico is an athlete, yeah. So it makes sense a little bit. But yeah, I thought that was that was interesting. But yeah, just to tie it all up, and like with the defensive line, again, this one wasn't even like their most egregious performance by any means. It wasn't like a disastrous. You know, there weren't a bunch of red flags popping up. But it's just with that group, I still feel like they're one injury away from being in real trouble. Landon Jackson still has not gotten home for his first sack of the season. He was close a couple times.
Yeah, he let old Hank slip.
We're just waiting for the lid to come off and for this D line to really start making plays. I mean, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. The 2 sacks isn't a horrible number, but just doesn't seem like they put enough pressure consistently on other quarterbacks, and they don't really control the line of scrimmage as much as you'd really like for them to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. It's crazy, you know, because we had these 3, we called them must-win position battles, and we can't definitively say that Arkansas won any of them, but they won the game.
They won the game comfortably.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, it's and that's probably because they dominated. If we went through it, like every other position on the field, maybe, I guess. And it helps when the other team turns it over 5 times. But hey, whatever, you take the win. But the point is, Arkansas didn't play their best game. They got the win, and there's still room for improvement moving forward. So if you look at that and you go, well, maybe Auburn just sucks, and they do, but that doesn't mean that Arkansas can only beat teams that are bad. That means that they have a lot of room for improvement, and we've seen them play better than they did in this particular game. So I think that should probably be encouraging moving forward, assuming they clean a few things up. So
yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, it is one of those things where, like, I keep coming back to, I didn't think Arkansas could win the way that they won today, frankly.
I didn't either.
Going on the road. And again, we kind of undersold how bad Auburn was. I know you and I both picked Arkansas to win. So for anybody who thinks we're being super negative, like, we picked Arkansas to win this game. They won this game. We think the better team won this game. Like, there's no debate about that. But yeah, I just really didn't see it going down the way it did. And so I do think, like, again, if we're saying, can Arkansas do this again? I don't think so. But the fact that they won this game the way they did almost gives me a little bit of weird confidence where I'm like, you know what? And like we talked about on the postgame, like, maybe this is just what you need. You need to win ugly sometimes, but it's crazy that the 3 position battles that we had our eye on, Arkansas arguably lost all 3 of them and then easily wins the game still. It's just crazy, man. It just shows you how weird the sport is.
Yeah, whatever. I'll take it as opposed to the Oklahoma State game where they're like, hey, they won this, they won that, they dominated the statistics, they did everything right and they lost. So sure, we'll take the inverse of that. That's fine by me. We also issued some challenges to several Razorbacks coming into this game, and like we always say, we got to put that caveat in there so people don't get upset. It's not, hey, this dude has stunk, he's got to be better. In some cases, that's it, but in a lot of cases, it's, hey, we think that this guy's got a favorable matchup, or we know how important this particular position is to this game, whatever. So we throw out some challenges prior to the game, and then we run it back and see how they did and who accepted the challenges. One of the main ones I threw out there before we really get into the players was Travis Williams, because last week, and I know that they had a lot of stuff going on, especially him. He welcomed a new baby into this world. Congrats. So he was in and out of the office and everything during the practice week, but Arkansas did not look prepared for UAB defensively. They were sloppy. They were undisciplined. A lot of uncharacteristic things coming out of that defense. I just challenged Travis Williams have a bounce back game, man. That's all we're looking for. Like return to maybe the expectations that you've put forth for this defense. And, not to be gangbusters or everything, but they always look prepared. They're physical. They fly to the football. And I thought challenge accepted in a big way for them. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't perfect. They got some things they got to work on, but man, you only allowed 14 points in this game. You forced the other team to change quarterbacks. You were opportunistic, forced a bunch of turnovers, and he got the game ball afterwards. So I would say absolutely, emphatically, Travis Williams accepted the challenge. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I mean, I thought Arkansas came off of what was arguably their worst defensive performance of the year. Actually, I don't even think it's arguable. I think that was clearly the worst Arkansas defense has looked all year was against UAB. And this was the best they looked, all things considered. Like, I feel like you could argue the first half against Oklahoma State when Alan Ballman was missing passes. But I thought overall, this is kind of the Travis Williams defense that the most optimistic folks envisioned when he took over the job as the DC. And what I liked about what they did, specifically when you talk about being prepared and scheming and all that, I think that's where he shined in this matchup. I feel like he was prepared for a lot of what Auburn did. And he kind of forced Hang Brown to beat him. He didn't beat him. And that's really what this matchup came down to. And also, Arkansas took a lot of risks defensively, which is something we part of our challenge was like, hey, you're not just going to get pressure with 4. We've determined you're not going to do that. So they were bringing some studs, bringing some interesting pressures from different sides. I saw Brad Spence getting in there in the backfield. Danico Slaughter comes in with the sack. They were trying different things to mix it up with their pressures. And by the end of the game, it kind of worked out, and they were able to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback finally, which was much needed there to put the game away. And I'm not saying that even sarcastically. It kind of burnt them on that 4th and 3. That was a cover 0 blitz where Jaden Johnson gets beat one-on-one, and Jaden Johnson took a risk and got beat. And so you don't want to see that. But I liked how aggressive Arkansas was defensively. And again, we talked about TJ Metcalf, who, by the way, I mean, we didn't challenge him, so we're not going to talk about him later or anything, but TJ Metcalf, player of the game, like no doubt about it.
When we do our superlatives, the report card and everything, he's player of the game.
100%, easily. No, and part of why he was able to make so many plays today is because he was around the ball all day long, whether it was 8 yards downfield, whether it was at the line of scrimmage, whether it was even 20 yards downfield, making plays. Like, he's always around the ball. And so when it gets tipped up, and even sometimes when he's there and he tips it to his own teammate, like, I felt like Arkansas played the defensive players. If you just go player by player, I didn't see a ton of guys who I didn't feel like were bringing that max effort and bringing that energy. And I thought T. Will's body language, they kept cutting to him on the sideline and kind of getting a view from behind him. His body language was awesome, dude. He looked so confident, and you can tell his defenders like playing for him. And this today was kind of the Arkansas defense that we saw glimpses of last year and that we had kind of heard about from Travis Williams' days at UCF. There's plenty to nitpick. I was really impressed with Travis Williams and his group today.
Yeah, I would take that effort from from the Arkansas defense every single week and be happy with it. And like Metcalf, it's so funny because we were joking early in the game. It was like, this dude leads the country in assists. Like, he's always in on the play, but he's not the one making the play because he tipped the ball that led to the interception, and he got the strip that led to the recovery by Dix. And it's like, okay, like this is awesome, man. Like, he's just a team player. And then he winds up getting 2 picks on top of that. Yeah. If he's not, miss me with the if he's not SEC Defensive Player of the Week, either somebody had a hell of a game or this is just not right, man.
Somebody with like a 1.5 sacks at Tennessee is gonna.
Yeah, I mean, come on now, that was incredible. So yeah, a heck of a job by him. We both issued challenges to the defensive line. Mine was to Landon Jackson for the 3rd consecutive week. He will be challenged again next week. I'll just go ahead and break that news. 2 tackles, no sacks. And he, I noticed him a few times. Like, he missed an opportunity to get a sack in a big way there earlier on in the game. Let the guy slip out of his hands, whatever. He did make a really nice play in the run game. It was almost a TFL, but he didn't get credit for it. Mm-hmm. I noticed at one point, and I felt like he might have impacted a couple throws without getting all the way home to a quarterback. So signs of life, but still not that breakout game yet. But you challenged Nico, who was one of the guys who got a sack, even though it was late. And
he waited until the very end. He waited until the very end, but he accepted the challenge. And look, like I said, I'm not trying to make light of it, because when you're up late in a game and their team's in obvious passing situations, that's when you need to get to the quarterback. And so I think that was awesome to get him on the board. continue to see him grow in confidence, and we'll see. I think he's still a little bit of ways away from SEC teams being like, oh, we can't double Landon Jackson because we got to watch out for Nico Davier. But again, like I said the other day, he's taking those strides that you expect a guy who wasn't like a super highly touted guy, but he started off, worked a little bit as a true freshman, got on the field more as a redshirt freshman, and just continues to level up each year. And it's been really cool to watch his career grow. And I would say he's the second best pass rusher on Arkansas's team at this point.
That's a fact. Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that, man. So hopefully he continues to progress, and I think he will. I've been high on Nico, and it's been really cool to see him kind of emerge over the course of the spring and the fall and get into a starting position. So I imagine he's gonna have a big game at some point here for the Razorbacks.
Or, by the way, let's drop that or on the depth chart with him and Junkai.
Yeah,
like,
on the depth chart.
No disrespect, but it's like that's like Nico's earned that. Let's just give him that.
Yeah. And I do want to point this out real quick though, like in terms of depth, and I am worried about it, but I was at least happy to see Ian Jaffard was out there for a little bit. Quincy Rhodes was out there for a little bit. Now they didn't necessarily do anything while they were out there, but it was good to see him in the game on the road in the SEC because you cannot continue to play these huge guys for 70 snaps a game. I mean, it's just it's unreal.
You got to start somewhere with those guys. So nice to get on the field.
I'd challenge Taylor Green to have a bounce back performance. Listen, it's again like I think this is more about maybe Arkansas now realizing who they are as an offense. Because I thought he was really solid in the rushing game. His ability to. And he's one of those guys that just does not look like he's moving that fast, but he always is. His hesitation and little like stutter step, it's almost like the James Harden step back that he does on these guys, and they just fly by him. And then he always seems to pick up the first down when you need him to. He's just a home run threat with his legs, and he's the ultimate wild card. He gives you the puncher's chance. I think I said that on the post game, but he is not an accurate quarterback. He does not throw a lot of, really good balls consistently. His mechanics are off. His footwork's not great. His progressions aren't great. He doesn't make great decisions, but damn it, he can make a play that can win you a game. And he did that in this one. He can escape bad situations and he can make plays. And every now and again, you'll get him throwing an absolute seed. And it's just really, really impressive. So, I wouldn't call it a bounce back when you go 12 of 27 with a couple picks and 151 yards. That's not great. But man, that was a heck of a play that he made to Satania, where he threw it like the length of the football field in the air. And he ran for 80 yards on the ground. And quite honestly, we thought he was benched for a minute there. It turns out he was just cramping or whatever.
And we thought it was weird. Let's just be clear there. Like we were kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, like you're winning the game. He hasn't been great, but what are we doing benching the guy? Turns out he just needed some fluids or whatever, but then he got back in there after sitting out a series and led a scoring drive, made the huge play there on third down. And I think the reason why Arkansas is one of the best teams in the country in terms of converting on third down is because he's such a dynamic threat. And it doesn't matter. It's not like they're converting a bunch of 3rd and 1s. Like there's several times over the course of the season where it's been 3rd and more than 10. And it was a 3rd and 19 when he hit Satania on that play. So he is just, I think you got to live with the bad because the good can just be so dynamic for you. But yeah, I mean, he's got to be better than 44% completions, no doubt about that. But for those who are out there saying, you know what, maybe they should have stuck with Singleton, or he's not the guy, he's not the answer. No, he is for this football team. He is your guy for better or worse. He's not going to win the Heisman, but he's the guy that gives you the best chance to win a football game.
I'll be honest with you, man. If it weren't for the 2 interceptions, I would really not have much to say. Like even then, his stat line would not be a pretty one. But if he just doesn't turn the ball over,
yeah,
I think this Arkansas offense is going to be tough to slow down a lot. And I mean, he's a big part of that, especially in the run game. I still am kind of like, even though this is clearly the worst performance of the year for Arkansas's offense, I still feel like Arkansas is going to be able to move the ball, even on SEC teams. Like whoever, like Auburn's not a great defense by any means, but I think they're a middle of the pack SEC defense, and Arkansas ended up with 24 points. But it's like I felt like Arkansas missed a ton of chances, turned the ball over after getting big turnovers. Like that one in the red zone before the half was just tough. And I know it was tipped and all that, but it's just like you can't have that. And then the throw where he just short arms it to Armstrong. Those plays, Arkansas was able to overcome that. if he just takes care of the football, I can live with the inaccuracies. You mentioned living with the bad there. I agree 100%. As long as he's not turning the football over, which, again, he did today. He did twice today.
The opponent is not going to turn it over 5 times every game. So
correct.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, really, like, the turnovers stick out to me way more than like anything else, because the inaccuracy we kind of knew about, and the slow decision making, and like some of that stuff is like, you don't love it, but it just kind of, you can live with it. Like you said, you can take the bad because of the good. And again, we've said it a lot. It's kind of the theme of this game. I think it's understanding who you have at quarterback and understanding what his strengths are and playing to those strengths. And I think Arkansas is going to get a better idea of it as they get into SEC play, and they're going to need to, because they're going to face some stiffer challenges. But overall, it's hard. I do think Taylen Green, like, again, not a bounce back game, but right. I do think, at least at this point, Arkansas fans understand what he is. And I think the coaching staff does too. And I mean, again, it's not all bad. It's not all good, but he is what he is. And frankly, he's fun to watch. Like, you can call him a lot of things. Boring ain't one of them.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Good call on Satania. That was a challenge that you issued. And your line of thinking in it was, well, just want to challenge somebody besides Andrew Armstrong in that wide receiver room to step up. And it ain't going to be Tyrone Broden, so I'm going with Satania, which is pretty much what you said. And yeah, I mean, hey, 3 receptions, 85 yards. That was just, I don't know, like it would have been cool even if he would just like ran right by the guy and been wide open for that touchdown reception. But the way he made that play, where he just kind of jumped up, went over his helmet, pulled it back, like that was, he is a playmaker. And you said it over and over. He is not just a gadget gimmick type of guy. He's really good, and he needs to be a part of this offense every game. And it's not something where you have to force it and be weird. It's just, hey, run your route, get open, and we can get you the ball.
Yeah, and when they asked Bobby Petrino about Satania in the fall, he didn't even say anything about the speed or the ability to make people miss or the change of direction or the athleticism. He mentioned how acrobatic he is and how he's able to adjust his body to make some of these difficult catches. He's just such a good, fluid athlete. And in this one, when he just kind of mossed the guy, it was kind of just a go up and get it type of thing. He's like 5'9", 5'10", going up there and rising up and getting that ball. But I think his athleticism, man, he's such a well-rounded, unique weapon, where he kind of does have everything. He has the short space change of direction. He's got the over-the-top speed to get behind defenses. He can burn you. He can make you miss in the open field. I think he's good at catching those passes over the middle. And on Arkansas's 2 touchdown drives, one obviously he capped off himself, but the other, he had a big reception that got Arkansas inside the 10 as well, which I thought was, I mean, again, one of the only receptions a receiver not named Andrew Armstrong made. And you touched on it, how I basically was calling any receiver not named Andrew Armstrong to kind of solidify themselves as an option. And I feel like Isaiah Satania at this point, just knowing what we know about him throughout his career, I feel like he's taken some of those strides as well. And he's kind of become a weapon that I feel like Arkansas knows they need to use now. And we'll see how they're able to utilize him moving forward. But I think that's a positive development. And I was so close to saying Tyrone Broden too. Like when we were doing the challenge episode Thursday, I was very close to just going in there and being like, Tyrone Broden, man, it's time to step up and be the number 2 guy. But I kind of decided to shift, and I'm glad I did, because it worked out.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that I teed you up for it before I gave my challenge, because I had Tyrone Broden written down. But after you did the Isaiah Satania spiel, I was like, I'm just going to skip that one. Actually, I like what he said better. So I issued a challenge to the center position. We weren't for sure at the time if it was going to be Addison Nichols or Amari Wiggins. It was Nichols. I just challenge not accepted. I mean, that's just got to be better. The snaps are a problem for Arkansas, and there were a handful there. I remember at least 3 instances where if Taylen Green wasn't 6'6" and long and athletic, then it could have been a turnover, a disaster waiting to happen. So that's got to be better. There were times where I noticed at least once where a bad snap I felt like was influenced because he knew he was pulling on a particular play. It was also like he was moving before he snapped it in a certain direction, and he just didn't get it home. And then I know he had at least one of Arkansas's penalties there. I can't remember if it was a hold or a false start or an early snap or whatever, but I know he had one. And so, like I know he's nursing that high ankle still. I'm sure he's not at 100%. But an ankle shouldn't impact your ability to snap the ball where it needs to be. And so that part of it just has to be a better for Arkansas. And I think when I look at this offensive line, they got to be better in pass pro. It could have been better in the run even tonight. guys have things to work on, but the biggest glaring thing, like the number one red flag for me on the offensive line, is getting better at the center position. It starts with snapping the football.
Yeah, I remember the two in particular that were off that really almost cost Arkansas. One was a completion to Armstrong, where Taylor did a really good job of just kind of corralling it and then getting his hands on the ball. Sometime it was like the most accurate throw he had all day somehow. Maybe that's just what he needs. And then there was another one where Arkansas gets a nice little gain, 2nd and 4, and then they end up in 3rd and 10 because he snaps it beside Taylor and he had to just kind of fall on it. And Arkansas was able to overcome both of those. But yeah, it's just been one of those things where 2 or 3 snaps a game, which may not sound like a huge deal, but it's like, I don't know, in these big game-changing moments when it's a tight battle, you really can't afford to just put the ball on the turf or risk something crazy. And I love Taylor, but he's gotten away with it a lot. He does that thing where he just decides to improvise and run 12 yards back. I feel like he's going to get one of those combined with a snap, and it's going to turn into an absolute disastrous play. So yeah, got to get the snaps cleaned up. And you're right, on that 2nd and 4, the one where Taylor just had to fall on it, it was one of those where they were trying to run lefty, pick up the first down, and he's pulling, and he just snapped it completely right. It was crazy.
Yeah. You issued a challenge to Devin Bell. I think he accepted it. He was electric just with his body language. The dude was fired up, man.
He was fired up, and he had 2 50-yard punts, one going 53, 3 for 149 total, an average 49.7. And he had the one, which you said, hey, mark that down. That was a big play in the game, where I thought he was, or no, there was 2, because he had the one where he got roughed and just ate it. And he got fired up because Ashton and Go, by the way, the long snapper, had two big tackles.
Stud, man.
Also, Devin Bale got in on the tackling himself on one of his kickoffs. His first kickoff all year that was returned past the 25-yard line. He met the guy at the 27-yard line. You can't make this up, dude. I issued a challenge to Devin Bale because I felt like this game was going to be somewhat low scoring. I didn't expect it to be that ugly, but I thought it would be a little bit more of a slugfest, and I thought it was going to kind of come down to one possession, and I felt like Arkansas's punting was going to be a big deal because we really haven't seen them punt much. They've had 2 games this year where they didn't punt at all, and then he punted 3 times against Oklahoma State. So good to see him get some reps. He got 3 more punts today. Did not cash his SARACEN prop, though, because he was supposed to punt 4 times and have a 59-yarder or something like that. But Devin Bale's good. Like, I think at this point we can confirm, like, Arkansas's got a pretty good punter.
Yeah, no, I thought he was real solid. I love it when kickers and punters get fired up, man. Sign me up for that. Because they're weird. They just are. They're kind of like the closers on baseball teams. They're just built a little bit different. So it's good to see. And obviously on football team, like, they're the smallest guys out there. So it's cool to see those guys get fired up.
And Devin Bale was like yelling at the referee when he didn't get that call. I said it in a moment to you. I was like, dude, he needs to be getting those superstar calls. Like, when you're a superstar,
right,
you get a softer whistle. Like, that's just how it is.
They didn't know today. They're going to know moving forward. I issued a blanket challenge to just a couple guys in the secondary, like on the back end, to step up. One at nickel, one at corner. I thought Slaughter was a lot better today. It wasn't perfect, but man, he got the interception, got one of the 2 sacks, and he just didn't stand out as a guy that was getting picked on. And so that was good to see. I think he might have led the team with 7. I think he had 7 tackles. Yeah. So great, man. Good for him, because I know he's a talented player. And he was just really having a hard time the last couple weeks, but man, 7 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. I didn't realize he had another TFL in there to go along with that interception. So nice work for him. And then also at corner, man, they got to get Braxton back. They have to get Jalen Braxton back. I think Cuddy was pretty solid in there.
I was gonna say, I'm not gonna say any names, but one of the corners has been pretty good and one of them's been pretty bad.
Singletary had a rough day. I'll say. I guess just he had a rough day out there. Wasn't his best. So, but if he is your 3rd corner or your rotational corner, then you're fine.
And Keon Stewart made a play today, by the way.
He did. Yeah, no, he absolutely did. So I would feel, I wouldn't say great, but decent. Like, I feel like they're very serviceable if you got Braxton and Robinson manning the corners. So they just got it healthy, man.
I think so too. And I mean, I also think Jalen Braxton, just period, is one of the best players on the defense, one of the best, most proven players. And so I think just having that presence, and he's a very vocal guy, very energetic guy. So I'm sure it's going to be a little bit of a boost, but I agree. Like, the secondary, I'm weirdly enough, we talked about all the matchups that we felt like Arkansas had to win and these big red flags that they had to avoid. The one position group that was like the one we were really confident was going to struggle was the secondary. And today I felt like was a little bit of a step forward for that group. Of course, having the quarterbacks throw the ball to you a lot certainly helps. But I definitely didn't feel like they were a weakness that I was like worried was going to get exposed there or anything like that. And so, yeah, I mean, it was, again, wasn't perfect. And I know Auburn racked up some yards late there, especially on the 4th and 3, 68-yard touchdown there. But I felt like overall Arkansas secondary held up pretty well. And you get Braxton back. Maybe you get Hudson Clark, extension of the coaching staff.
That's right.
Real grinder. First guy in, last guy out.
He's
that
real
kind of
beater.
no-fly zone, And so I do really think, like, if you get some of those guys back, all of a sudden you're not saying, hey, we're DBU, we're clamping everyone. But Arkansas feels pretty good about their secondary at that point. And, if the rest of the defense can continue to make their strides, I feel like they're in a decent enough spot.
Yeah, and I will say, and this is credit to Travis Williams and really the entire defense, but I think about the secondary because of the quarterback situation. Even though both of Auburn's quarterbacks are bad, they just are not good at football right now. But there's something to be said for dealing with two separate guys who have two very different skill sets, the way Arkansas did. They were all over it with Hank Brown. It was really impressive, had him rattled, did the things that they needed to do in order for him to get benched, and he did. And then Peyton Thorne has a different skill set. He's more mobile. He can use his legs. And he also absolutely torched Arkansas last season in a 48-10 win in Fayetteville. And yeah, like he had his numbers. A big part of them came on one play, but they did a really nice job making the adjustments they had to make. And again, like you get out of the game, you only give up 14 points. So nice job on their part. Bold predictions. We had a handful of these. These are always fun. And it's bold predictions is the key here. Like we like to think a little bit outside the box. We like to push the boundaries a little bit.
Rebels.
Yeah, we're rebels. The first one I put out there was that Arkansas would get 3 or more sacks and only one of them would come from the defensive line. Well, they got 2 and only 1 came from the defensive line. So missed on that one. Atlanta and Jackson have finished that 1 sack. Then it would have been the opposite of what I said, where they would get 3, but 2 came from the defensive line, but it didn't happen. So wrong.
Brad Spence tried to do that one for you. He got back there one time and he was close, but then they kind of threw it away or something. That would have been it. But I thought that was a decent call.
Yeah. And you followed up with that. I don't know if you actually like threw this out as a, one of your specific challenge, but you said, hey, I kind of like where you're at with that. I think Arkansas is going to get 2 well-timed sacks. And they both came there pretty late. So I think that counts, right?
Yes. I'll be honest with you though. I viewed it a little differently. Like I viewed it as like 3rd and 9 in the second quarter. Arkansas is going to get a massive sack. And then maybe late they would get another. I'll take 2 on the last possession.
Okay. All right. I like that. Shout out to you on this bold prediction. You said Braylon Russell is going to get meaningful snaps, and buddy, he did.
Curtis, I was all over the running back position for the Arkansas Razorbacks. I really, it's crazy. I'd love to be like, yeah, that just tells you how much I know. I just felt like it's something that needed to happen for the big picture. I didn't honestly expect it to really like happen as much as it did this week, but Braylon Russell, not just at the goal line either. They targeted him in the passing game. He had a nice, I believe it helped set up Arkansas's touchdown drive because he caught the little 7-yard pass that brought it to 4th and 2, and then they went for it, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think so.
But anyways, he played like legitimate snaps. They tried to get him in at the goal line, and he got stuffed a couple times, which really I'm not blaming him for. But it was nice to see Braylon Russell. That's like valuable experience. His numbers weren't like, he didn't light it up or anything. He finished with 9 carries for 22 yards. Again, 3 or 4 of those were late at the goal line where he just were nothings. But he had a couple nice little bursts there. I think it's just nice to get him that experience on the road in the SEC because that was the big thing when they put in Rodney Hill in that Oklahoma State game and they were like, oh, why didn't you put in Braylon? Sam Pittman said, because I didn't want his first carry of the game to be in that spot. Now you kind of can chip into that a little bit, getting him 9 key reps or 10 touches total because he had the reception. That's big time. Like that's stuff that he can build on. He knows what it's like to run out there against an SEC defense. I thought that was a very positive development, Curtis. And the other running back thing that I got to pat myself on the back for, and this one just kind of was luck. I said, I think Jaquin Jackson is going to be held below 100 yards, but that Arkansas would still win. And he finished with 75 rushing yards on 22 attempts, 2 touchdowns, which I will say, like you and I talked about this game a lot this week. If I had read you that exact stat line Wednesday, you would have been like, yeah, it's about, You know, maybe fewer attempts, maybe 20 carries, 75 yards, but like that was about what we kind of envisioned, that he wasn't just going to be gashing this Auburn defense. But like I said earlier, I felt like Jaquinton Jackson earned every yard he got. And again, Arkansas found a way to win despite not being able to get their workhorse really going the way they normally do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I predicted that Andrew Armstrong would not be Arkansas's leading receiver in this game. Turns out that was right. Now, he did lead him with 5 receptions, but he had 47 yards.
Yeah.
But Satania, I mean, 3 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. So that was good to see. That's exactly, well, in a way, that's what I wanted to see. Like, I think I said on the show, like, I don't want to see a deal where Armstrong has, 4 catches for, 35 yards or whatever, and then one guy gets, 2 catches for 60 or something. You don't really have anything else going on. Outside of Satania, they literally had nothing else going on, but that's a big game and a strong performance from him. And like you said, I think it gives you a pretty clear indication now of, okay, Armstrong is your dude. He's the Batman, but Satania can be the Robin in that wide receiver core. So I felt pretty good about that. I had a couple others. One that I was close on, one that I wasn't. I said neither team would get 400 yards of offense in this game.
Auburn got some cheap yards there late.
Auburn got the cheapies late. Yeah. So Arkansas finished with 334 yards. So they were low, significantly lower than they have been all year, but whatever, they won. But yeah, Auburn got to 431, and that just would not have been the case if it wasn't for the inconsequential, unimportant trash yards late in the game, but whatever.
They literally had like a 28-yard completion as time was expiring.
Yeah, exactly.
Had a couple of completion. I mean, like we said, Nico Davier was playing corner. Like, I mean, what are you going to do?
I mean, yeah, I'm looking at in the last 15 seconds, Peyton Thorne pass right complete, 9 yards. Peyton Thorne rush right, gain of 7. Peyton Thorne pass deep left, complete, 18 yards. In the last 15 seconds, they got over the 400-yard mark.
Yeah, shameful football.
Crazy, unbelievable. The other thing I said was that there would be no fumbles in this game. Oops. But that both teams would throw picks. Well, that was a fact. Taylor Green threw 2. Hank Brown threw 3. Peyton Thorne threw 1. But there were fumbles. Arkansas fumbled once, but they got back on it. And then Auburn, that was an absolute game changer. TJ Metcalf coming up with that, I guess,
he was at the 7-yard line. It was crazy. And it wasn't like
an Auburn touchdown. He fumbles that thing in the end zone and Dix jumps on it. That was a huge play in the game.
I think TJ just had his hand because he was trying to wrap him up and tackle him. I think he just kind of got his arm in there at the right angle and it just made contact with the ball, some friction or whatever. But yeah, it wasn't like he like hit it and like really went for the strip. He was just trying to tackle the guy and then placed his arm in the right spot. But Curtis, I wanted to give you a little bit of a pat on the back because you didn't do enough of a victory lap for the receiver thing. When you said someone other than Andrew Armstrong is going to lead them in receiving, I feel like what Isaiah Satania did today was like exactly what you like. If you could have scripted it yourself, that would have been what you would have expected. Like, oh yeah, that's what I want is someone to do that, make the biggest play, have more yards than Andrew, and just step up. And he did that. Yeah,
it feels good, man. This is fun to do after a win.
Oh yeah,
even though it was ugly. And
last week really wasn't a win, so that's why I was like a little bit weird last week.
Yeah,
but,
man, all wins aren't created equal, and both of these last couple games for Arkansas have been ugly. But I do feel a lot different after this one than I did the UAB game. After that one last week, I was like, "Sheesh, man, that was rough." Yeah. And we were talking about it as if it was a loss. And people accuse us of doing that on the postgame show after this one, but that's not it at all. Like I feel really good about this. You got a 10-point win on the road. 3-1 is a good spot to be in. 1-0 in SEC. You can't get any better than that. But I think it's a good thing that we can come in here after a game like this and talk for 50 minutes. And there's a lot of things that Arkansas can improve on and get better at, and that they didn't do well today in a win. That tells you that this football team does have a chance to win some more football games moving forward. And that's all you can ask for, man.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think this was like some performance where it was like a shining star of a day where Arkansas just everything went right for them and they solved all their issues. But it's week 4 and you're not expected to be there. And I think there's definitely something to be said about being able to learn in a win. Obviously, everybody always says you either win or learn. You learn a lot in a loss, but I feel like Arkansas learned a little bit in that Oklahoma State loss and realized, hey, we don't want to learn that way. We would rather be the type of team that wins ugly, and we can learn that way. And Arkansas won ugly, man. And when you're on the road in the SEC, again, it's just really hard to complain about a loss. And I understand you can do it. And I understand that sometimes you just play a really bad team. And I think Auburn's not a good team, but I don't think they're like an abomination where it's like, I don't think they're going to lose a ton of home games that they're favored in for the, from now on.
They're bad by SEC standards.
Correct.
But they're not, and by their own standards, but they're not an awful football team. Like they're still going to, I wouldn't be surprised if they went 6-6 and got to a bowl at the end of the year.
It reminds me. I mean, if that 2021 Auburn team could make it to a bowl, then this one probably can. But I don't know. They're 2-2 now. We'll see how their schedule looks. And I mean, honestly, Hugh Freeze has a lot of questions to answer, man. And like, I got to be honest, things have been going well for him in the recruiting front. And I was kind of buying it, like, hey, Auburn's going to be better this year, and then they're going to be a dangerous team in a year or two. I think Auburn fans, that has to be a little bit of an eye-opening. Like, yo, we are not where we thought we were going to be. I'm sure they didn't expect to be winning the national title in year 2, but I don't think they expected to be fighting to make a bowl game, and it seems like they're going to be doing that. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Well, I think we're done here, and so we're gonna get out of here and maybe enjoy the rest of the Saturday night football slate. But we will be back tomorrow, Sunday morning, because we're gonna do our report card. We're gonna go through every one of these positions and give a grade. And some people love it, some people hate it, but we're gonna do it, and we're looking forward to it. But appreciate everybody for tuning in with us, rocking with us. The post-game show was a blast. This was a lot of fun. That's going to be great. And then, boy, I got to tell you, those Inside Arkansas Live daily shows are a lot more fun in the week after a win. People are going to be optimistic, and we're excited about that. So appreciate everybody. As always, make sure that you get subscribed to our Inside Arkansas YouTube page. Anywhere you get your podcasts, find Pot of That Nature, Spotify, Apple, wherever you need to be. We're going to be there, and we got a lot more coming your way. So for Andrew Ellis, has been Curtis Wilkerson, and we will be back with you soon. Arkansas beats Auburn. Feels good, man. Talk to you guys later.